Where'd he go? Andy.
Sorry, I just need to plug in. I'm running out of juice.
Andy, we're live, mate. We're live. Oh my God.
Morning, everybody.
Wow. Andy. Well, mate, honestly, anyway, welcome back, everyone. Episode 16 here, season 2. And I hope this isn't the way the show's going to go today. Mate, I'll give Andy a moment to compose himself. Des, how are you at the moment?
Doing great, thank you very much. Pretty quiet couple of weeks, so enjoying a bit of a peaceful break. How about yourself?
Mate, listen, it was going swimmingly. Chaos as always, and you know, we've got a massive project on at work. So opening, you might have heard it on the radio actually. Opening on the 19th of September, and so all panic stations. Alongside that, my wife's birthday today, so you know, scrambling to try to be an amazing husband. And then I go and whack myself in the face with a hard hat yesterday. I mean, you could probably see the damage, right? Like. Now, can I share something with you? Can I share this?
Please,
I feel
please.
like I didn't report it as an incident, and I'm not going to do an investigation. Is that a problem?
Yep.
Of course it is.
Can I investigate it? I'll do it for free.
Love you.
As long as I can publish the findings live.
Mate, I can tell you the root cause now.
Oh, I've known it for the last 5 years, mate.
How are you, Andy? How's it going, mate? Where about in the world are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit all over the place this morning. It's been a particularly busy week. Currently in Christchurch, being accommodated very beautifully and finely by Zealandia Horticulture, who are looking after me brilliantly.
Thank you, Zealandia Horticulture, for looking after our tri-host, Andy Evans.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun down here. It's good.
Perfect. And mate, how is young Oliver? Our young apprentice? What has been up to?
I haven't seen him.
Wow.
Been away all week.
So the levels of supervision are poor, if any at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mate, are you like? Do you want to log out, log back in? You don't seem like you're quite with us at the moment, mate.
Yeah, no, all is good. No, I spoke to him this morning.
Yes.
The school are reviewing their health and safety practices, which is great. So there was a consultant in on Wednesday.
Consistent state of review, right? Consistent state of review.
And the consultant was in on Wednesday, so he just sort of followed around a bit and checked that she was doing a good job. And he seems to think that she was.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Did he tug on the pant and go, hey, listen, consultant person, my dad's a consultant too. Did any of that take place? Do you think?
No, I think it went more along the lines of I'm the safety advisor for the Circus of Safety. I don't think he would ever admit to being my son. In public, but he doesn't need to because he's his own person. He's his own safety advisor.
And when he dropped like such a high flying role, like I'm the safety advisor for the Circus of Safety, as in this show, was the consultant in awe? Do you think, or was there like, who the hell's the Circus of Safety?
No, there was a certain degree of awe is a very strong word. But there was a certain degree of shock.
Wow. Okay. Fair enough. It is amazing how far and wide our viewership and how this has grown. Right. I know you sent me an email during the week, and the subject line really confused me. But it sounds like we've even become an acronym. We often refer to ourselves as the Circus of Safety, and then the subject of the email it was COS, and I'm like, who the hell's this COS person? Finally work out it's Circus of Safety. But that's why I'm not the brains of this operation, or the looks, or much else, actually. Hey, Des, so listen, I think we get into it, but before we get into it, as always, do you want to prepare us for our disclaimer this week?
Yeah, sure. Continuing our theme of having a guest disclaimer.
Oh, sorry. You mean there's more than what? We're now to our third guest. This is impressive.
Yes, we're keeping the momentum going with our disclaimers because we know how important they are to our listeners.
So important.
I reached out to one Derek Toner from Engaging Solutions, long-time friend of the show, and can I just say the very embodiment of kindness, thoughtfulness, and conscientiousness. And
He is.
Never, and I mean never, has a bad word to say about anyone.
That's true.
Lovely fellow.
Why have I got a feeling that's about to change?
When I mentioned doing the disclaimer, he jumped at the opportunity. Just a man of absolute generous nature. So he's made a video. Brent, can you get the video rolling for us?
No, I've not seen this. I believe it's about 5 minutes in length. So here we go. Are we ready, Tim? Here's not quite live, but here's Derek Toner. Bear with me. Multiple things juggling. Here we go.
Hello there. My name is Derek, and I've been invited by the Circus of Safety to give you this episode's disclaimer. And I had to think long and hard as to why they wanted me to do it. And the only conclusion I can come to is because of my celebrity status. They're just trying to pump the numbers up. I'll get to their numbers later. Now, this disclaimer was inspired by the series of ACC ads that is currently on television, where they kind of get you to have a moment, have a little think about what you're going to do if you fall off the chair. You know, who's going to give you a bed bath? So I think you need to have a little bit of a moment before you actually listen to this podcast. Okay. So here's my disclaimer. It's very simple. Don't mind a thing these lads are talking about. Don't give it the slightest bit of attention, right? Let's look at the individuals we're getting advice off from here, okay? The Brenton fella, right? They've got Brenton in there. I was trying to track that man down for nearly 8 weeks to set up a meeting, and he kept fobbing me off and brushing me off, and I'll be there and I won't be there, and then honestly, one of the hardest characters to actually pin down. And then when I did get to talk to him, he didn't know what I wanted. The thing I wanted to talk about, he hadn't any information to give me. So quite frankly, I just don't trust the man. Right? Now the other fella, Andy, you got to watch out for this one. Now I was at a gig a couple of months ago, was speaking at a safety conference. And these jokers were there, they were doing the MC stuff, right? And I got up and do my bit, and then Andy comes over to me afterwards. He's got a fucking camera crew with him. Right? He thinks that he's, Louis Theroux or John Campbell. He's his cameraman. He says, "Come here, we want to record all these exciting things, and will you come and talk to us?" So he brought me upstairs to where there was nobody else. I was quite concerned for my safety, to be honest. And then he proceeds to ask me a lot of questions, and he's videoing the whole thing, right? But that was months ago. Those videos have not seen the light of day. I actually think he just records them for his own personal use at home. Can't trust that man either. And then they've got, here's the clanger. They've got Des, who is actually a lawyer. He's studying law again at the moment. He was a lawyer in a past life. This guy knows law inside out. And he's asking me, some skip the Irish guy, to come and do a disclaimer. I have no legal knowledge whatsoever. I think it's culpable that he's passed it over to me. So, listen, don't mind what these fellas say at all. The other thing is, if you think about it, they're skiving off work. They skive off work every 2 weeks under telling their managers, this is a good use of my time. Feckin' skiving. Don't be minding them. They should be out actually doing some work. Actually going out and keeping people safe. Not sitting in a studio drinking tea from their mugs with their branding all over it, talking about what safety might look like. Don't mind the thing that they say, right? Now, they say they've got nearly 1,000 1,000 listeners. I call BS on that. There's no way there's 1,000 people listening to this show. That's crazy, right? But if you happen to be listening to this show and this episode, right, maybe you've skipped off into the Portaloo to listen to this. If you've done that, if you've gone off to the Portaloo on site to listen to it, you have to start thinking about your life options. What are you doing? Sitting in a Portaloo listening to this. Mate, there's 100,000 things better to be listening to this show, right? Maybe you're at work and you've got an email, a notification on LinkedIn that says the show is starting. Listen, make sure you put your headphones on because you don't want your colleagues to know that this is what you're listening to, right? In between emails. Don't mind them in the slightest bit, right? But listen, if you do happen to have an accident, I want you to really listen to, if you have an accident at work today or tomorrow or next week, I would encourage you to blame somebody. I really would, right? Blame your co-worker or blame your missus or blame your children or blame your employer, blame God, blame anybody that you want, right? But here's my advice. Don't blame listening to this show because that ain't going to see 2 seconds in a court of law. You will be laughed out of court by any judge if you turn around and say, I was listening to these jokers and I acted upon it. Mate, no one is going to give you any credit for that at all. So that is my advice. Don't mind what these guys are saying in the slightest bit, right? But if you do want to get engaging techniques, I think you should look up a company called Engaging Solutions. They help connect people with content. Help people connect with each other. So that's it. Don't mind them. Give them absolute hell in the comments. Make them work for their labelled cups of coffee and enjoy the show.
Wow. There's
yeah.
The next time you send a disclaimer through and tell me not to watch it, I can't believe we played that. That is Derek Toner. Wow, not a bad word said about anybody until this show, right? is that going to be the new catchphrase?
I think I need to reach out to Derek and make sure he's doing okay. It sounds like he's got a bit to get off his chest.
Wow. Hey, tell him to reach out for a meeting. Happy to do what I can do. But wow. Yeah. Thank you, Derek Turner, for that enlightening piece of disclaiming. Okay. Well, I think we're cracking on with it. So should we get into it and spin the wheel?
Spin the wheel.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring up the wheel here. Bear with me, team, as I do that. Here we go. Okay, so some exciting stuff on, and here we go. The Wheel of Death. Well, this one here is right up Andy's alley. In fact, I think this might have even been in one of Andy's.
No, it wasn't.
The role of health and safety training. I mean, what a way to start the show, right? Absolutely. Now I can't seem to stop my screen. There we go. The role of health and safety training. Listen, I'll give you the privilege, Andy, and the respect that you demand, but whether you deserve it or not, I guess we'll see. But your initial thoughts. I mean, how excited are you about this topic?
Very excited. It's a very interesting topic. Very, very interesting.
Okay. Again, I can't believe I've got to remind you guys of this. We're trying to fill 45 minutes here, so I need a bit more than just a couple of sentences, a couple of words. Des, you, mate, the role of health and safety training. Your thoughts?
I tell you what, a lot comes to mind because there's a lot of back and forth on LinkedIn about competence assessment, training, e-learning, and the pitfalls with that sort of thing. Unit standards, they're coming under a bit of scrutiny, and there's a lot of discussion around them. So this could go in many different directions.
Wow, thank you, Des. Thank you for that. That's very insightful. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where this goes, and we could branch off. And I know we've got a massive following of HR professionals. So I guess what I'm interested in knowing is are we going to go down the road of the role of health and safety training in, I guess, health and safety? I guess that would be a natural assumption, or are we going to go down the role of health and safety training in training and development? Full stop. Fascinated to see where this goes. And oh wow, welcome back, a long-time friend of the show, Keith Harvey has brought up a really good question there. Who is the training for? And that's going to be an incredibly important question, no doubt, that we're going to come up with and answer as we work through it. Who is the training for? So, Andy, we know you're a fan of definitions. Let's work it out. I mean, what were you thinking when you put this up there? What was the point of it all?
Well, I don't think it was me that put it up there, but let's put that to one side. Let's play hypotheticals. If I had put it up there, I think the reason it would have gone up there is because of the many different aspects of it. And the fact, probably like many of the things that do go up there, is there was a degree of frustration behind it. But the definition piece that you talk about is really important. And it's good that Keith said, who is the training for? I would take it a step back further than that and say, well, what is actually health and safety? Because if we don't know what health and safety, you can't train people in something that you don't know what you're training them in. I mean, it's absurd. And I think, I know you'll say that that's not important, but actually it is incredibly important.
Off your high horse, will you? Off your high horse.
There's no high horse.
What is health and safety? We've been around and around and around on this topic. I mean, let's stop overanalyzing what's going on here, and let's just talk about the role of health and safety training, right? And I guess, Des, I mean, are you on this kind of? And this is where Derek was going, right? I mean, we're talking. Let's just actually have some practical application here. I mean, Des, what are your thoughts on what Keith had to say? Who is the training for? I mean, what do you think? What Andy just rabbited on about?
Well, I think we do need to confine the conversation. Otherwise, we could end up going down any number of rabbit holes and talking about different things. I think Keith's question is pretty good, and I'm kind of thinking that what could be important to talk about, because we've already talked about professional development in health and safety. So I don't think we should talk about health and safety professionals training and degrees and pathways into that sort of career. I'm thinking more meeting that requirement in the law that you have to provide training, instruction, and supervision and information to workers. Maybe we need to be talking about that. You know, what sort of safety training do they need, if any?
Yeah, cool, great. So should we maybe start the conversation by looking at, Andy, and don't for a minute get a glimmer of hope here that I'm jumping onto your hoopla, but do we maybe need to go? Let's look at what is considered health and safety training. So like what would you categorize as health and safety training? I guess would be a question. Des, so you started to look at that as in this conversation. What are your thoughts when you hear the words health and safety training? What sort of training comes to mind for you?
Some things that I would look for if someone was saying that they're offering health and safety training, I would be looking for training in how to do a risk assessment, how to identify hazards, some broad sort of general knowledge about implementing controls and making sure they're effective. So there'd be that sort of element of hazard and risk management. Then I would also be interested in seeing what the legal duties are and how that ties in with everything. But it's all a bit vague, so I'm not really sure, and I think Andy would be able to provide a better answer than me.
Well, I mean, Andy's probably just going to try and sell his wares here, because I believe that's one of the services that he offers. So Andy, when you think, let's not get on the hoopla of what is health and safety, but when you let's just step forward a little bit, if you could grace us with
try my
with
best
such.
to.
Thank you. Let's keep it grounded. When you think of health and safety training, what are some examples of that come to mind for you?
I mean, unit standards have been mentioned already, so you could go in. We could look at the unit standards that are on offer. So, permit issuer, permit receiver, is that safety training? First aid training, is that safety training?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Yeah, I'm just sort of throwing the conversation around there because because it's a unit standard under the domain of health and safety, does that mean it's health and safety? That's a whole different thing. But I think what Des touched on is correct, and I would generally narrow the sort of the generic level safety training to really be around hazards and the management of hazards, perhaps a little bit of legislation. What tends to happen is that people bolt other things on that aren't, in my mind, aren't really safety.
No, and that's a valid point. So could we argue then? A lot of the stuff that you guys have touched on so far is what I guess consider maybe soft skills. I guess people would argue, but so could we put the fact that like EWP, to elevated work platform training? I mean that's focusing on, I guess, the controls around how to safely operate an elevated work platform. I believe they touch on some of the legal applications around that. Would that be considered health and safety training? Working at height training? I guess you're teaching controls within that training around how to keep yourself safe at height. I mean, would those sort of things fall into the bucket, do you think, of health and safety training, Andy?
I'm not sure if there would. There's a fine line between doing your job, isn't there? Like actually being capable of doing the job. Now, it's whether you approach it as capable of doing the job or you're training people to do the job safely. And I think that's the interesting dynamic, is that you can train people to do a job, but not necessarily do it safely. The EWP training that you're talking about isn't just around EWP safety. It's primarily about operating an EWP safely. And there is a difference there. Isn't there? I think there is.
I don't know. Can you maybe explain the difference for somebody like myself, possibly?
Well, like I suppose operating an EWP, you stand in it, there's levers, up, down, left, right, yeah, all that sort of stuff. That's how to operate the EWP. Is that operating it safely? Probably not. Operating it safely would involve other things, yeah, about perhaps wearing a harness, perhaps looking at the slope of the ground, checking if it's maintained, that sort of stuff. And that sort of EWP training combines those two things. It's not EWP safety training, I don't think. It's how to operate a piece of equipment safely, which combines those two elements.
Yep. No, and I guess that makes sense. I mean, Des, for you, when you're thinking health and safety training, I mean, what are your thoughts when I start throwing out things like that? Working at height training, EWP training, that sort of thing. I mean, what are your thoughts? Does that fall into the bucket of health and safety training?
It could potentially, like work at heights training. That can mean many different things as well. So if we're talking about, you could do sort of introductory work at heights. What is work at heights? It's anything where there's a risk that you might fall, and that could be a very sort of generic safety approach to it. But then there's actually performing work at heights, which might be fall arrest training or fall restraint training and setting up a fall arrest system. There's definitely a distinction there, but I don't know if it's a distinction we need to make for the purposes of this discussion.
No, well, which is interesting. And I guess that's where, again, Keith's going hard. He must be hitting the coffees early on, and he's made another great statement here, and talks about what are the goals and objectives of the training, and how can success be measured for different layers of organizational hierarchy. And I guess that's where, I don't know whether I'm reading into what you guys are saying too much, but is that what we're saying? So I guess it really depends on what we're trying to achieve out of it, and what the goals and objectives are of that training.
Sorry, I was just reading.
Is that direct to Andy?
Oh my God! Okay, this isn't the Circus of Brenton. This is the Circus of Safety, where we have three of us. You're supposed to actively contribute. Oh my God, where's Derek Toner? Let's get him on the line. Maybe he'll have something to say, because he had plenty to say earlier on. Anyway, so I'll read. Oh my God, I'm sorry. This is just chaos. What I was saying is what you're saying effectively what Keith was alluding to here, and I'll bring this up again for those of you that didn't see it because you're too busy looking at other things. What are the goals and objectives of the training, and how can success be measured for the different layers of organizational hierarchy? So I guess regardless of the training and whether it does or doesn't fall into that bucket, we need to be very clear on what we're trying to achieve here, right? Is it an awareness training? Are we trying to teach controls? Which becomes interesting, and I guess then my wonder is there such a thing, Des, in your mind? I'm going to let Andy stew on this question for a bit. In your mind, Des, is there then therefore actually such a thing as health and safety training?
Yeah. I think if you're going to have a health and safety management system as a standalone system, or even if it's part of an integrated system, you're going to have to train people in how that functions. And to me, that would squarely fit and be called health and safety training.
Wow. Welcome to the party, Des. That was beautifully articulated in my mind. And he's stewing. I can see it. I might come back to you, Des. So Andy, mate, what are your thoughts? I mean, is there actually, like, if we start breaking it down like that, and you're starting to get all semantic-y about, is it health and safety training, or is it training that, I don't know, I can't remember what you said. But, I mean, is there actually such a thing, or is there actually a need for such a thing as health and safety training? I mean, that's quite a specific category, right?
Well, potentially it is, but then it's not. I mean, health and safety for me isn't really a subject in itself.
Sorry. Can I just stop you there? I've got to ask this question. Have you ever fallen off a fence, Andy?
Yep.
And did it hurt?
Yep.
So the question back is there actually such a thing as health and safety training? Don't say yes, there is, but no, there isn't. Like, just pick a side, mate. Stick with it. Climb over the fence, one side or the other.
It's all right. But fundamentally, you're teaching people about gravity. Now, is gravity health and safety? I don't know. Is physics health and safety? I don't know. And it's where you pitch it. And what's really interesting, and this is what I do with my clients. I probably not have any after this, but historically,
what you do it? What you
historically
confuse
what I've done with clients? No, is people phone up and say we want some risk management training or some safety training, and I go, that's cool. What do you want training in? And that's when it goes really quiet. They say health and safety. I say, yeah, but what aspect of health and safety? Yeah, and Keith's dead right. You need precise indicators of what is it actually you're teaching. And the way that I often try and frame it and get the information from the client is when these people walk out of the room, what value have we added to them? How are they going to be different? And then in a week's time, how are they going to be different? And in a month's time, how are they going to be different? And in order to get to that, you've got to really focus on what actually it is you're teaching them. And this whole generic off-the-shelf risk management training, generally, stuff that I've seen and witnessed, the amount of value in it is negligible. It's a tick box exercise because they're trying to capture a whole heap of stuff, but often they don't even differentiate between the key terms in there. So in my mind, training is very, very specific. The term training is about a narrow focus. Education is the opposite. Education is about broadening the mind and questioning. Training is about narrowing it. And if you're narrowing it, you've got to have a very clear objective of what the purpose of the training is. And as Keith said, you've got to be able to measure success. And if you're not specific about it, you can't.
Sorry, I'm just zenning out, mate. Sorry, you're sending me to a zenful place.
I probably got a bit technical there, using words like education.
Dad, what is that? It's almost like you've been reading Keith's mind. And I don't know if this is why you got distracted earlier, but what a profound statement here. And I guess it's directed at you, Andy, because Des and I, we're just workers, right? You're claiming to fame with education. So, is there a sizable difference between training and learning? And I guess that's where you're going to, right? And is one a tick box exercise while the other is gaining knowledge? And that's effectively what you're alluding to, right, Andy?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't necessarily say that training is a tick box exercise. The training's not important. It's the learning that's important.
Yeah, but Yeah, so that's I guess the thing, and I'd like to go back in time, Andy, when you and I would be considered colleagues, and this is prior to the introduction of the current NZQA unit standard for health and safety reps training, right?
Yep.
And I know we were actively involved with an organisation whose name we won't mention. Because they don't sponsor us, but if they want to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at us, we'll happily say their name. I am going to be there next week, I believe, checking out their new venue. But I might have to negotiate a marketing deal. But I guess initially when we first got involved with that organisation, health and safety reps training, effectively, if we're honest about it, was a tick box exercise, right? You did 2 days training, you're effectively covered off. And I know when we had the opportunity to review that with the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 and the new unit standard that came out, is it 29315 or something? I guess this was the journey we went down, right? Do we want people to turn up and to learn an NZQA standard, right? That was one option. We could have gone down that road. The other road we could have gone down, and I guess this is the road we did go down, is what do we want? We looked at it from the angle of when somebody walks out of this training, what does a good health and safety rep look like? What is something they can? Because I know when I first started delivering that training, people would walk out of the course with almost more questions than answers. So great, I know all the stuff. Now what? What do I do? How do I use it? How do I actually apply the tools that I've been given? And that's what we're talking about here, right? Really understanding what is the end game. What do you want from that training before you get into it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Often in risk assessment, you'll see, or hazard registers or SWIMs or whatever documents, you'll see training as a control, right? But training's not a control. Training's an activity, it's something you go to. The control is the actions and the competence of the operator. So it's about the learning. It's all about the learning. And like I was saying about some of the conversations that I have with clients before I develop training programs for them, is that they expect me to massively over-deliver. Like someone's been doing a job in an unsafe manner for 30 years. Well, half an hour with Andy, I'm going to fix 30 years of bad stuff. I mean, I'm good, but bloody hell.
Mate, the amount you charge, they probably expect miracles, mate. Water into wine kind of stuff. I mean, this is the problem with you consultants. They expect me to over-deliver. Well, the amount of money they pay you, of course they expect you to deliver. I mean, jumping over to you, mate. I mean, Andy touched on something I quite like it, and I'd really like to maybe really kind of play with this. I mean, training as a control versus, I guess effectively thinking about the learning that's coming out of it. The training is about making people aware and teaching them the controls, right? What are your thoughts on that kind of distinction between training as a control versus learning about the controls?
I'm with Andy on that one. Training is not a control. It's an activity, and it might be an activity that contributes towards someone's competence in performing a task, but it's a small piece of that puzzle. And I think that we're kind of drifting back to what I alluded to earlier on in the show about the difference between training, competence, assessment. What do those words really mean, and what is it that we're trying to attain? Because the law requires you to train workers in safe processes and things like that. Paraphrasing, obviously, but people probably head down that path and consider it a control as something that also meets their legal obligation. But really, what's actually going to have an effect on the safe outcomes at your workplace is competence.
Wow. This is actually, I've got to be fair, I thought this was going to be an Andy selling his snake oil show, but I think we're hitting on some really kind of cool, profound stuff here, right? So training is not a control, and that's an interesting statement in the fact that, is that again showing and highlighting naivety within the safety profession as such around that, because the law says we have an obligation to do something, that makes it a control. So fascinating. And I don't think we've got time on the show today to kind of go down that little rabbit hole, which is interesting. And again, I think if we, would I be, I mean, so I'm just having these profound euphoria moments as we speak. You might tell I'm getting quite giddy, and I still don't know whether that's from the concussion I received yesterday after whacking myself in the face with with the hard hat. I tell you what, that hard hat, it hurt, mate. Like it had the hearing protection on. Like I've gone, it's not about how good you are, it's about how good you look, right? Like my hard hat has like every freaking bell and whistle on it that you can imagine. I've got the visor thing, I've got those earmuff things, I've got it's got a chin strap on, and it bloody hurt. Anyway.
Did you ever receive training in the safe use of a hard hat? Which is a legal requirement?
Well, clearly, I got to be fair. No, I haven't. So I really need to look at myself here in this before I start. Don't throw stones in glass houses and all.
I'm quite amazed that you hadn't realised that hard meant hard. Yeah. And that you were surprised when it hit you in the face. It hurt.
Well, no, you see, you could think it's the other way. I always thought I was hard, but clearly I'm not. I'm soft and squishy. You know what was even worse? Sorry, I'm just getting a bit distracted here, but I think I can do that with you. Like, I went looking for the health and safety advisor. Right? I was like, oh my god, I'm bleeding. I need a first aid kit. How do I deal with this? I went looking for the advisor, and she was nowhere to be seen. She was off-site doing God knows what. I had to fend for myself. I had to go into a portaloo. I had to stem the bleeding. I had to make sure that emotionally I was okay. It was quite embarrassing. And there I was fending for myself. So anyway,
are you getting your EAP today?
No, I will be contacting EAP. Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. Well, that's what I thought this would be, but this seems to be more of a ridicule, which was kicked off by Derek Toner. But just going back to the topic, so training's not a control. I'm really interested to pick up on what Des was talking about, and he kind of touched on that earlier, and he's brought it back up again. Assessment of competence or assessment, right, of learning. Where do we sit with that, Andy? What are your thoughts around that? What part of the puzzle does that fit into? So we've done the training, and we've made. Let's just go down the naive road of we believe that's a control. We've done the training part. We now want to do an assessment of competence because that's what we think we need to do. What are your thoughts?
It's an essential part to some assurance. Of course, it is. Plan, do, check, act. So you need to check that the learning's happened. Now, the way that you check that the learning's happened should be appropriate to the learning. So if you are teaching somebody to use an EWP safely, then it really shouldn't be a 4-hour exam. It should be observation of somebody using an EWP correctly. And that relationship between competency, supervision, that all comes into play here as well. Is that you've taught somebody to do it, but the first few times somebody should be supervising them.
Yeah, nice.
That's what we're after. We're chasing competence.
Des, your thoughts? Assessment of competence. Where does that fit into the puzzle?
I agree with Andy. It needs to match the learning. But I've had this question on my mind for some time about whether can a computer assess competence? So if you do an online quiz and it's held out to be a competency assessment based on the computer's analysis of your results, is that a competency assessment? Can a computer assess your competence?
Wow. Okay. I think we're going to go down a rabbit hole here, and maybe this is some more stuff, some other conversations for another day on the wheel. But that becomes another interesting question. So again, I'm aware that one of us apparently has to go to work shortly. But so I like to want to pick up on what Andy touched on. This is kind of where I was going with this question, I guess. So assessment of competence again isn't a control, right? It's part of the plan, do, check, act, and I guess that's where we're going. It's a tool to check that the controls you've got in place are actually working, right? So that's another fascinating, enlightening moment there on this. Well, we've had so many enlightening moments. I think we should just cut the show. We've gone over our quota of enlightening moments. But then heading on to where Des was going, that becomes another fascinating question, right? Can a computer assess competence? And I guess I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to go back to what Andy and Keith were alluding to earlier on. I think it really depends, Des, in my mind anyway, on what it is that you're trying to assess the competence of. if we're focusing on health and safety training per se, I guess it depends on what aspects of that health and safety training we're trying to assess the competence of. If it's the application of controls, I'd argue possibly not. But yeah, I don't know what Andy's thoughts are as we start to look to wrap up the show this week.
Yeah, I guess to that point, it would be the assessment has got to be specific. You're supposed to monitor and assess things. You've got to have a very clear understanding of what you're assessing, and that goes right back to the first point that I make, is that health and safety as a subject area is not specific. So when you talk about health and safety training, it covers so many different things potentially. It's poorly defined. Therefore, it makes developing any sort of assessment or understanding of competency very challenging. Because, can you say that somebody is a competent health and safety person? I mean, where would you even begin with that? Because unless the subject area is clearly defined, and people have tried to do that, and we've talked about INCHPO guidelines and things, but it's such a vast area that can you, or do you have to take it sort of a step back from that and look at you're competent at specific elements of it? So you're competent at risk assessments, you're competent at investigations. But investigation is not unique to safety, right? So an investigation, teaching people how to investigate, you're teaching people how to investigate. The investigation, the inquisitive mind, the structure, the models, that's not safety, that's investigations. You're just applying to safety. Risk management, in some respects, is the same. Risk management is risk management. You're just applying the concepts of risk management, which could be financial or any sort of risk management, to the safety context. So, when I break courses down, it's what are the key things that I'm trying to teach these people? And often it's not safety, it's other subjects, but we're teaching it through a safety lens.
Yeah, nice, well said. Eddie, I know you got to shoot off, mate. Listen, just wrapping up in case you got to jump off before we actually end up finishing the show. I mean, so just to wrap up your thoughts, then, what is the role of health and safety training? That's the topic of the show, right? What is the role of health? The role of health and safety training? Your mind, one sentence.
Primarily, it's to help build competence so people can work safely.
Nice. Fantastic. Love your work. Mate, if you've got to drop off, no doubt, great to have you on the show. Safe travels home, back to Tamaki Makaurau. And yeah, no doubt we'll catch up real soon. There's your thoughts, mate. So as we wrap up the show, again, you and I, now that he's gone, the anchors of this show. Did you pick up, we've been emailing in the background. We've got some exciting stuff in the pipeline, hopefully with my sponsor, Sign On Site. Thank you very much, Sign On Site. Do you notice how this morning his email was, actually, Des and Brenton, I don't think I've actually got anything to contribute. You see how he's trying to flob all the work off to us? Have you noticed that?
I have, and to be fair to him, I think he's done more, like at least 2 hours worth of work this week, so he's probably feeling a bit exhausted. To be fair to him,
pressure, right? But hey, now listen. In all seriousness, though, Des, I mean, as we do wrap up the show, and with the two of us, the role of health and safety training. I mean, what are your final thoughts on the topic that popped up today?
Well, maybe, and I'm paying kudos to Andy here. Maybe he's right. Maybe that's health and safety is just the paradigm or the frame through which we view competencies in other specific areas. And I would really like to discuss that idea of computers assessing competence in another show. I think that would be a cool topic to talk about.
Mate, I'm just computers.
I've got some strong views on that one.
I'm sure you do. It's quite funny. I think there's probably a lot of inside jokes going on, right? So for those people listening in, I know this is hard to believe, but we actually spend quite a considerable amount of time talking to each other outside of the show, and so we've got a pretty good feel where we all sit with different topics and aspects of health and safety. So hence the little chuckle when Des mentions he's got a strong opinion on computers assessing competence. So, no, fantastic. I mean, yeah. Listen, I've got to be fair. I think this show has been one of my more enlightening aha moments, and I think I'm actually going to struggle post-show to apply some of this stuff, because there's quite a bit of profound thinking. And I know in my day job, I'm really lucky where I've got a training and development coordinator, and I'm doing some great work around creating a training and development framework. And I really think I'm going to be taking a lot of the stuff that we've just been talking about back and trying to see how we can entwine it and really kind of question, I guess, is there health and safety training? Is there such a thing? Or are we training people to do their job safely? And that's a catch. And I like where you went, Des. The health and safety training component is teaching people how to use the health and safety management system potentially, or the integrated management system, depending on your flavor.
And just talking about the same thing, like using the same words. If I want to talk to someone about identifying stored energy sources and then applying the hierarchy of controls, I'd like that person to understand what those words mean.
Yeah.
And so to some extent, that part would be health and safety training. Yeah,
no, definitely. I think that's where the aha moments have really come for me today. Is there maybe isn't such the field or the scope, I guess, of health and safety training is actually quite narrow, right? But the field of training and teaching people to do their job safely, that's where the scope is massive. And that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So Des, mate, listen, hey, what do you have planned for the next couple of weeks in between shows?
Once again, not much. Study and work, and some more work. So yeah, not a very exciting couple of weeks, but hopefully quiet.
But sometimes you need that, right, mate? Sometimes you need that.
Yep. How about yourself?
Well, I don't know if you can hear in the background my notifications popping up, but I seem to have been sent a flurry of emails. So I think I'm going to be jumping into my inbox shortly. But
maybe someone's hit themselves with their hard hat. You better respond to that.
Or somebody's watching the show and now reporting me to WorkSafe or something stupid. I was thinking of trying to milk it for an LTI and take a day off due to embarrassment, but I thought, no, better not. No, it's quite frantic. Like I said, we're racing to the end of a massive project that we're working on at work. So really exciting times. Our team have done an amazing job, and it's this back end that gets really, really tight. As always, it's the little things that matter, and that's what often takes time. So got a lot of that going on. BMX racing's the season's starting to kick off again, so getting quite active in the BMX New Zealand board space as we prepare for a pretty hectic summer. So no, some exciting stuff, really, some exciting stuff. But listen, there's much to Derek Toner, right? I've got to be fair. I had a profound bunch of respect for that man until recently. I thought he was intelligent. I thought he was factual. And I just want to pull him up on, he stated that there's only about 1,000 people listening to the show. Well, he's actually factually incorrect. Because as we discussed this morning, there's actually 1,300, and that's quite a significant difference between the old 1,000 and, so Derek, just reaching out to let you know, we've actually got 1,300 followers. Now, one of our most recent followers, and a big shout out to her, Petra Molly, I think it is. Petra Molly, she is currently a health and safety advisor cadet, and she currently works for Nail or Love here in New Zealand. So, Petra, listen, great to have you to the show. Hopefully we haven't tarnished your learning and development as a health and safety advisor too badly. But yeah, great. Hopefully look forward to seeing you pop up in the comments sometime soon. She's had quite a bit of a role in health and safety over the last few years. So really good to see her moving up and getting into the industry and growing what is a great career path. So fantastic. Thanks for joining. Again, it's been a while since I've mentioned my mates at Sign on Site. Again, thank you for the hardware that's keeping this show going. That's absolutely fantastic. And Des, as always, mate, it's been a pleasure to carry this show with you.
Thanks very much. And let's look forward to the next interim show that we've got next week and next fortnight's main show.
Yeah, it'd be really good to get some feedback on that. Are people listening to the bonus shows where we recap the episodes? I know last week's was quite enlightening, as they all have been. Actually, just on that before we go, it was a little bit embarrassing. You know how we had Ben Redwood? I know you couldn't make it, but I did an interview with Ben Redwood around incentivizing health and safety. And he was incredibly flattering towards how good the show was and yada, yada, yada. I just saw a LinkedIn post. He's on another podcast. So I got to ask questions about that. But that podcast looked far more professional. They've got a real studio and stuff, mate. We might need to up our game a little bit.
Sounds like we need sponsors. Is this a call for sponsors?
This could be a call for sponsors. But I just want to, again, thank Sign On Site for sponsoring my device and keeping us real. Anyway, great to see you all. Look forward to catching up with you soon. And, just watch out for hard hats.
Thank you. See ya.